Inner recognition over external proof is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life, because we are taught from an early age to trust what can be measured, verified, and approved by others. We are conditioned to believe that meaning must come with evidence, that certainty must be supported by facts, and that what cannot be explained clearly should be questioned or dismissed. Yet the most decisive moments in life rarely arrive with documentation. They arrive as quiet inner movements, subtle shifts in perception, and unshakable feelings that precede reason itself. There are moments when something feels true before you can explain why. You feel drawn toward a path, a person, or a decision without being able to justify it logically. This does not mean you are being irrational. It means that a deeper layer of the psyche has already recognized a pattern long before the conscious mind catches up. The unconscious does not speak in arguments. It speaks in sensations, symbols, attraction, resistance, and recurring thoughts. Inner recognition is the psyche's way of signaling alignment. External proof operates on a different level. It seeks validation from outside sources, reassurance from outcomes, and confirmation from other people's opinions. While this can be useful for practical matters, it becomes misleading when applied to inner truth. External proof always arrives too late. By the time evidence appears, the decision has already been made internally. What looks like certainty formed by facts is often certainty that was felt first and justified later. This is why people often doubt their strongest intuitions. They wait for permission to trust what they already know. They look for signs, timing, approval, or guarantees. When these do not appear immediately, they assume the inner signal must be wrong. But the psyche does not operate on social timelines. It recognizes meaning based on resonance, not convenience. Inner recognition often feels calm rather than dramatic. It does not shout. It does not beg. It simply persists. Even when ignored, it returns. Even when suppressed, it influences choices from the background. You may distract yourself, pursue alternatives, or convince yourself that something else makes more sense, yet the same inner knowing quietly remains. This persistence is not obsession. Obsession is anxious and urgent. Inner recognition is steady, grounded, and strangely patient. One reason inner recognition is so difficult to trust is because it often contradicts past conditioning. You may have learned to associate safety with familiarity, even if familiarity caused pain. When something genuinely aligned appears, it can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. The mind interprets this unfamiliarity as danger. Doubt arises not because the inner signal is false, but because it does not match old survival patterns. There is also the fear of responsibility. External proof allows you to blame circumstances if things go wrong. Inner recognition leaves no such refuge. If you act on what you know internally, you must accept authorship of your life. This level of responsibility is uncomfortable. It requires maturity, self-trust, and the willingness to face consequences without resentment. Inner recognition does not promise ease. It promises coherence. When you follow it, life may not become simpler, but it becomes more honest. Conflicts begin to make choices align with values rather than fear. You stop negotiating with yourself. Even when outcomes are uncertain, there is a sense of internal consistency, as if your actions and your inner world are finally in dialogue rather than opposition. External proof appeals to the persona, the part of you that wants to be seen as reasonable, successful, and correct. Inner recognition speaks to the self beneath that image, the part that is concerned with meaning rather than appearance. When these two are in conflict, anxiety emerges. When they are aligned, there is a quiet confidence that does not require explanation. You do not need to defend what you truly recognize. The need to over-explain is often a sign that the decision was not fully internalized. Inner recognition stands on its own. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It simply is. Over time, those who learn to trust inner recognition develop a different relationship with uncertainty. They stop demanding guarantees and start listening for coherence. They notice that life responds differently when choices are made from alignment rather than fear. Opportunities unfold in unexpected ways. Resistance decreases. Even obstacles feel purposeful rather than random. This does not mean rejecting reason or dismissing reality. It means understanding the order in which truth emerges. First there is recognition, then understanding, then evidence. When this order is reversed, life feels forced and fragmented. When it is respected, actions feel rooted, decisions feel lived in, and the sense of self becomes less divided. Inner recognition is not loud because it does not need to compete. It is not anxious because it is not trying to convince. It does not rush because it knows it will be heard eventually, whether through acceptance or through the consequences of ignoring it. And this is why the deepest truths in your life often reveal themselves long before you are ready to admit them, quietly shaping your choices, relationships, and direction from beneath the surface, waiting not for proof, but for your willingness to trust what you already feel to be real. The unconscious draws what the conscious mind questions because they operate according to entirely different logic. And much of human confusion arises from mistaking one for the other. The conscious mind is concerned with clarity, control, predictability, and safety. It evaluates, categorizes, and compares. It asks whether something makes sense, whether it is allowed, whether it fits the narrative you have constructed about who you are and how life should unfold. The unconscious, however, is not interested in maintaining comfort. It is interested in wholeness. What the unconscious draws toward you often feels paradoxical. You may find yourself magnetically attracted to people, situations, or paths that your conscious mind immediately resists. The mind begins to question, why this? Why now? Why someone like them? Why something that disrupts my plan? These questions are not signs that the attraction is wrong. They are signs that something deeper is at work, something that cannot be resolved through logic alone. The unconscious does not choose based on ideals. It chooses based on imbalance. Wherever there is something unintegrated within you, the unconscious seeks it out in symbolic form. It brings you experiences that mirror your denied traits, unresolved wounds, and unrealized capacities. This is why patterns repeat until they are understood. What is not made conscious does not disappear. It returns, wearing different faces, creating similar emotional reactions, insisting on recognition. The conscious mind, on the other hand, prefers consistency. It clings to identities formed through past experiences, even when those identities no longer serve growth. It questions anything that threatens its sense of order, when the unconscious draws something that challenges these structures. The conscious mind labels it dangerous, impractical, or irrational. Doubt emerges not because the experience lacks meaning, but because it exceeds the limits of the current self-concept. This tension explains why people often feel conflicted about the most important encounters of their lives. A person enters and stirs something undeniable, yet the mind searches desperately for reasons to distance itself. You may list flaws, timing issues, external obstacles, or moral justification, all while feeling that something essential is being ignored. The unconscious is not persuaded by arguments. It communicates through emotional intensity, repetition, and a sense of inevitability. What the unconscious draws is rarely convenient. It does not align with social expectations or carefully planned trajectories. Instead, it introduces friction. That friction is not punishment. It is pressure applied where growth is needed. Just as physical muscles grow through resistance, psychological development occurs through encounters that challenge existing patterns. The conscious mind questions because it fears dissolution. Growth requires the loosening of old structures. When the unconscious brings something that demands change, the mind interprets it as a threat to stability. This fear is not imaginary. Something must indeed be relinquished. Old beliefs, outdated defenses, and rigid self-images cannot survive genuine integration. The mind resists not because it is foolish, but because it is trying to protect continuity. Yet protection can become stagnation. When the conscious mind continuously overrides the unconscious, life becomes repetitive and emotionally flat. There is safety, but little vitality. The same themes recur, the same disappointments repeat, and a subtle sense of incompleteness persists. The unconscious continues to draw what is needed, increasing intensity when ignored, because its goal is not comfort but completion. Understanding this dynamic changes how doubt is interpreted. Doubt is not an enemy of truth. It is the mind's response to being led beyond familiar territory. Instead of asking how to eliminate doubt, the more meaningful question becomes what the doubt is guarding. Often it guards an old identity that has reached its limit. When people learn to observe their attractions rather than immediately judge them, they begin to see patterns. Certain types of individuals evoke strong reactions. Certain situations feel charged with meaning. These are not random. They are expressions of inner material seeking conscious engagement. The unconscious draws what contains the potential for integration, even if the conscious mind cannot yet articulate why. This does not mean surrendering blindly to every impulse. Conscious discernment remains essential, but discernment is different from avoidance. Discernment listens, reflects, and inquires. Avoidance dismisses and suppresses. When the conscious mind learns to dialogue with the unconscious rather than dominate it, inner conflict softens. Over time, this dialogue produces a new form of clarity. Instead of demanding certainty before action, one learns to tolerate ambiguity while remaining attentive. Life is no longer forced into rigid plans. It becomes a process of unfolding, guided by signals that originate beneath. Rational thoughts yet shape destiny with remarkable precision. What the unconscious draws will continue to challenge the conscious mind until both are aligned, until questioning turns into curiosity, resistance turns into understanding, and the individual realizes that the very things once doubted were invitations toward a more complete and authentic self, calling not for immediate answers, but for the courage to remain present with what insists on being seen. Doubt is the final test before alignment, because it represents the threshold between old patterns and new possibilities. It is the point at which the mind, conditioned by past experience, resistance, and fear, confronts what the heart and the deeper psyche already recognize. Doubt does not appear randomly. It arrives at precise moments in life, often just before clarity and integration become possible. It is nature's way of ensuring that transformation is conscious rather than accidental, that alignment is earned rather than assumed. When something is meant to occur in your life, whether a relationship, a career path, a creative pursuit, or a spiritual calling, its energy is already moving toward you. You may feel it in subtle ways: recurring thoughts, unexpected synchronicity, emotional intensity, or an inner pull that refuses to be ignored, yet the mind questions it. Doubt arises because the conscious mind seeks certainty, predictability, and control. It wants proof before trust, plans before risk, and safety before growth. This questioning is not failure, it is a test, designed to determine whether you are ready to engage with the truth that is calling you. The final test of doubt is often internal. It asks whether you will act in alignment despite uncertainty, whether you will follow what resonates at a deeper level even when the surface mind resists. It is not enough for something to be desirable or appealing. True alignment requires that you choose it in full awareness with all the risks and unknowns that it entails. The psyche uses doubt as a mirror, reflecting your readiness, courage, and willingness to engage with life authentically. One of the most common expressions of this final test is in relationships. A person may enter your life and evoke emotions that feel simultaneously right and terrifying. The conscious mind may list reasons to resist: timing, differences, past wounds, or practical obstacles. Yet, the deeper self senses significance. Doubt arises precisely because the connection threatens to dismantle old defense mechanisms, to challenge habitual ways of thinking and being. The final test is not whether the connection exists, it is whether you can meet it with presence and honesty, without retreating into fear or avoidance. This test extends beyond relationships. It applies to creative ventures, career changes, and personal transformation. When an opportunity aligns with your true potential, it often comes disguised as risk, uncertainty, or difficulty. Doubt questions whether you are capable, deserving, or ready. The mind imagines every possible obstacle, magnifying small risks into reasons to avoid engagement. Yet, the final test asks, will you recognize what is real beneath the illusion of danger? Will you take the step that is calling you, not because it is guaranteed to succeed, but because it is authentic? Doubt is also a test of discernment. It forces you to differentiate between superficial desires and genuine calling. Not every attraction or opportunity is meant for you, and not every instinct is trustworthy. Doubt requires reflection, observation, and patience. It is a filter that separates fleeting impulses from the profound. By navigating doubt consciously, you strengthen your ability to perceive alignment when it appears, reducing the likelihood of being misled by temporary infatuations, social pressures, or habitual avoidance. Importantly, the final test is not about eliminating fear or uncertainty. Fear is inevitable when the unknown approaches, and uncertainty is a natural companion of growth. The test lies in how you respond, whether you allow fear to dominate, or whether you act with awareness and courage despite it. Alignment is not passive. It is an active engagement with life that requires commitment, responsibility, and the willingness to be changed by what you encounter. Doubt is the measure of your preparedness to embrace that engagement fully. The final test also cultivates maturity. It strips away impulsivity, superficiality, and dependency on external validation. When you confront doubt, you are asked to rely on your inner compass rather than outside opinions. This process strengthens self-trust, deepens self-awareness, and develops resilience. By the time doubt is resolved, you no longer need constant reassurance. Your choices are grounded in recognition rather than persuasion, in clarity rather than obligation. From a psychological perspective, doubt functions as a balancing force. It prevents premature alignment that could lead to harm, disappointment, or regression. It challenges the ego to confront hidden biases, unexamined fears, and unresolved conflicts. In this way, doubt is not an obstacle but a guardian, ensuring that alignment occurs in a state of readiness rather than compulsion. It is the final checkpoint, the subtle pressure that determines whether growth will be conscious or ignored. When you pass this test, alignment emerges naturally. The connection, opportunity, or calling no longer feels like a threat. It no longer triggers reactive resistance. Doubt, having served its purpose, recedes because the mind and the deeper self have reconciled. You act from a place of integrity, clarity, and presence rather than from fear, avoidance, or habit. The tension between uncertainty and recognition dissolves, leaving a sense of flow, coherence, and grounded purpose. Doubt is the final test before alignment because it represents the point at which transformation is truly earned, the moment when awareness, courage, and authenticity converge to allow life to unfold according to its deeper design, challenging you to step beyond familiar boundaries, while demonstrating your readiness to engage fully with what is called you-projection, shadow, and wholeness in love are concepts that sit at the very heart of human relationships. Yet they are so often misunderstood that many people mistake their discomfort for failure. Love is not simply an exchange of affection or a merging of desires. It is an intricate mirror in which the psyche reveals its hidden dimension. When we fail to recognize this, we unconsciously project our unacknowledged traits onto others, confusing the reflection for reality, and we mistake attraction for understanding. Projection is the process by which we attribute qualities we deny in ourselves onto someone else. It may be subtle or overt, conscious or unconscious. We might admire a partner's confidence, creativity, or sensitivity only to realize later that these are qualities we have neglected or repressed within ourselves. Similarly, we might criticize behaviors in others that actually mirror our own unresolved impulses. In relationships, projection is both a gift and a trap. It draws us toward experiences that catalyze growth, but it also creates illusions that obscure true understanding. Until projection is recognized, love can feel simultaneously magnetic and confusing, thrilling and suffocating. It is not the partner who is flawed or mistaken, but the perception shaped by our inner landscape. The shadow is the second essential element in this dynamic. It is the part of the psyche that contains everything we have denied, rejected, or repressed. These are traits that we have deemed unacceptable, unworthy, or dangerous parts of ourselves that we push into the unconscious to maintain an image of coherence. The shadow is not evil, nor is it something to fear in its entirety. It is raw energy, potential, and vitality that has not yet been integrated. In love, the shadow often emerges as discomfort, jealousy, fear, or inexplicable attraction to behaviors or qualities that contradict our conscious self-image. A person may irritate us, trigger old insecurities, or challenge our values, but these experiences are shadows speaking. The shadow shows us what we have disowned. It is the psyche's way of saying, this exists within you, see it, feel it, and integrate it. The shadow is rarely comfortable because integration requires courage and honesty. Most people avoid it, projecting it onto their partners or external circumstances, and in doing so, perpetuate cycles of misunderstanding and conflict. Wholeness in love is the state toward which this process moves when approached consciously. Wholeness is not perfection or the elimination of difficulty. It is the integration of all aspects of the self, including the shadow, and the recognition of one's projection. When projection is acknowledged, and the shadow is explored rather than denied, love transforms from a reactive entanglement into a conscious union. In wholeness, partners are mirrors, but mirrors that reflect with clarity rather than distortion. Attraction remains, but it is no longer solely a response to projected desires or unacknowledged needs. Conflict may still arise, but it becomes an opportunity for self-awareness rather than blame. Wholeness allows love to function as a medium for growth. It becomes a place where the unconscious can meet the conscious mind in dialogue, where hidden aspects of personality can be recognized and where authentic intimacy emerges. The interplay of projection, shadow, and wholeness explains why relationships often feel like both a blessing and a challenge. When two people meet, they do not merely encounter one another as separate entities. They encounter entire unconscious landscapes, both theirs and theirs reflected in the other. The intensity of attraction is often the intensity of projection, the qualities we have denied in ourselves that we see consciously or unconsciously in the other. The challenges we face in relationships are often shadows insisting on recognition. If we can engage these dynamics with awareness, we cultivate maturity, empathy, and resilience. We learn to differentiate between what belongs to the other and what belongs to ourselves. We stop expecting the partner to complete us or fix us, and instead recognize that wholeness must first be developed internally. True love, therefore, is an invitation to inner work. It asks us to observe our projections without judgment, to explore our shadows without fear, and to move toward wholeness without shortcuts. The process is iterative. Projections will recur, shadows will re-emerge, and growth is never linear. Yet each encounter, each challenge, each reflection offers the opportunity to become more conscious, more integrated, and more capable of authentic intimacy. Love is a teacher of the psyche, revealing the layers of the self we cannot see alone. When approached with presence and awareness, the emotional intensity that once felt overwhelming becomes a tool for expansion. The partner is no longer simply someone to desire or fear, but a companion in the journey towards self-realization and completeness. Relationships, grounded in projection awareness, shadow work, and the pursuit of wholeness, become less about dependence and more about conscious engagement. They require courage, honesty, and vulnerability, and they challenge the ego to loosen its rigid structures. In such love, attraction is sustained not by illusion, but by authentic resonance. Conflict becomes a dialogue rather than a battle, and intimacy deepens beyond physical or superficial connection. In this way, love serves not merely as comfort or pleasure, but as a catalyst for personal evolution, guiding the individual toward an integration of psyche and a greater understanding of the self in relation to another. Union is not about completion, but conscious choice, because the idea that another person can complete us is a deeply ingrained misconception that undermines authentic connection. Many people enter relationships carrying the belief that their partner will fill the gaps in their identity, resolve past wounds, or supply the sense of wholeness they feel is missing. This expectation turns love into a quest for dependency rather than a path to awareness. True union does not promise completion. It offers the possibility of shared growth and mutual engagement, grounded in conscious choice rather than unconscious need. Completion is an illusion because wholeness is an internal process. No external presence can permanently resolve internal fragmentation. The longing for completion often arises from the unacknowledged shadow, unmet childhood needs, or habitual patterns of seeking validation from others. When we look for someone to complete us, we unconsciously project these deficiencies onto our partner, expecting them to fill spaces that only we can occupy. This projection distorts perception, creating attachments based not on reality, but on what we imagine the other person will provide. The result is a cycle of disappointment, frustration, or dependency, because the fundamental premise that union can solve inner incompleteness is false. Conscious choice, by contrast, recognizes that both individuals enter the relationship as whole beings, even if imperfect. It is the deliberate decision to engage with another person, to offer presence, vulnerability, and authenticity, without the expectation that the relationship will supply what the self has neglected to cultivate. Union becomes an act of collaboration, not consumption. It asks individuals to bring their awareness, emotional responsibility, and integrity into the connection rather than their unhealed needs or unresolved wounds. In this context, love is less about merging into a fantasy of wholeness and more about navigating life together while remaining fully accountable to oneself. Choosing consciously requires self-reflection. It requires the willingness to identify and own patterns of dependency, projection, or avoidance that may have previously influenced relationships. It demands recognizing when attraction is motivated by unconscious desire for completion versus genuine alignment with another person's presence and values. Conscious choice also entails observing emotional reactions without immediate judgment or suppression. The partner becomes a mirror for both personal growth and relational dynamics, revealing tendencies that need attention and areas where awareness is incomplete. The relationship, therefore, serves as a laboratory for psychological development rather than a container for escaping discomfort. This approach to union transforms how challenges are perceived. The conflict is no longer evidence that the relationship is wrong or that one partner is failing to complete the other. Instead, disagreements illuminate differences in perspective, values, and unresolved internal material. The conscious choice is to engage these challenges with curiosity and responsibility rather than defensiveness or blame. Growth arises not from the partner fixing us, but from mutual acknowledgement, understanding, and commitment to self-awareness within the relational space. Union in this sense becomes a practice of continuous conscious engagement, where love is expressed through intention, presence, and integrity. Furthermore, conscious choice reshapes the way intimacy is experienced. Physical and emotional connection are no longer substitutes for unmet needs. They are expressions of mutual recognition and shared presence. Sexual and emotional intimacy are enhanced because they emerge from alignment rather than projection. Vulnerability is offered not in hope of being completed, but as a conscious invitation to authentic closeness. In this context, trust and emotional safety grow from deliberate, ongoing commitment to honesty and awareness rather than from dependency or idealization. Union as conscious choice also acknowledges impermanence and freedom. Each individual maintains autonomy while participating fully in the relationship. There is no coercion, no expectation that the other must fulfill an internal void, and no hidden agenda to reshape the other to fit personal fantasies. Love is chosen moment by moment, sustained by awareness rather than by attachment to a narrative of necessity. In this way, the connection becomes resilient, capable of weathering challenges, because it is rooted in conscious engagement rather than unconscious need. The shift from seeking completion to practicing conscious choice represents a fundamental evolution in understanding relationships. It elevates love from a dependency-based model to a partnership grounded in awareness, responsibility, and mutual respect. By embracing conscious choice, individuals move beyond the illusion of being incomplete and enter relationships with clarity about what they offer, what they require, and how they navigate the inevitable tensions that arise in intimate connection. Union is no longer about filling voids, but about creating a space where both participants can engage authentically, fully present, and fully accountable to themselves and each other, fostering a depth of relational integrity and personal evolution that cannot emerge from dependency alone.